Hello, everyone. This is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the chilling conclusions. Another chilling session. Just chill around, and chit chat. Too chill, you become too cold. So don't be too chill. Need to wear jacket and wear some kind of coat. So the situation report is already out. So do check it out. And let's go through some of the front lines. We just go through and see what else was there for me to tell you. Kherson front, nothing don't need to bother. Okay, so we have some number of fightings reported along the Zaporizhia line or the Zaporizhia front. And Russian forces attacking at Petikaki, Novoandreevka, Novodanilivka, Malatomashka, and Dorozhenka. And Dorozhenka is the one that is a bit more interesting because we haven't seen this for a month. It's very rare that there's fighting around here. But generally, it still doesn't feel like there's some kind of offensive. So let's wait and see. I think the major thing is more towards I think let's not go through all the front lines. Let's jump to Nevelsky. The Nevelsky collapse seems to has begun. I have covered in the conclusions before that this is likely to happen due to the Russian threat towards Koenig. And if the Russians take Koenig, or even better, start to happen around here, the Ukrainians is going to find it really hard to redraw. An important thing to note, if you look at the roads, there's one road. This is the road out. You can see the road system is kind of messed up. And the Russians was previously attacking Zeleny Pershi. So this is already a pretty big threat because the Ukrainians need to go on this road to redraw, to retreat out. And there's only this one route generally going down. If the fighting is happening around here, they have to go further south, and there's a water body around here that's blocking the Ukrainian withdrawal. So this is why the situation here is getting very tense, and the Ukrainians starting to redraw. And we see this with the result of the Russian capture of the Velsky, a settlement, a small little village that the Russians have struggled to capture for a long, long time. This entire area is one of the strongest Ukrainian lines where the Russians just keep struggling to break through. They have never been able to break through much over this region here, or maybe it's just not meaningful for them to attack. But whatever this collapse has started. The Russians previously have already also starting to push north of Krasnohorivka, and with the latest report, we know that the Krasnohorivka is about to collapse. The Russians are about to capture the entirety of Krasnohorivka, including the two chopsticks over here. There's the northern chopstick and the southern chopstick, and the northern chopstick is already taken by the Russians. It's already now Russian chopstick, so no, they need another chopstick because chopstick need to work in a pair, so they need to get the southern one as well. So this is getting really bad. I'm not sure how fast the collapse is going to be because this has been a very, very strong line, and there may be a lot of traps, a lot of mines. So it will take some time for the Russians to go through. So I mean, it's still no 10 kilometers, 11 kilometers of terrain to go through. It's a lot of grounds to cover, so it's going to take a long time. Try running 10 kilometers. No, it'll take you quite some time as well. So it is a huge distance. This will take maybe a week, I guess, a week to go through, or maybe longer because it's just dangerous to just blindly run through this area here. So the Ukrainians have to hold Hernik. This is definitely, and they will have to hold the Russians over at Zeleny Pershi. I think this is also necessary. So they must hold this line so that they can give the Ukrainian forces as much time as possible to redraw into more defendable lines. So this is definitely a requirement for the Ukrainians. So let's continue to wait for this situation to unfold. I mean, it will be, I think, a very sad day for the Ukrainians if this Nevelsky region also falls, and when this falls, Krasnohorivka, as a whole will fall first. And with the fall of Krasnohorivka, I think the Russians will then head to Alexandropil, which is also a place where the Ukrainians must hold the line because this is part of the withdrawal route. The Ukrainians, at this moment, they can still go through this Kurakivka. They can still run out from Kurakivka to retreat, or they have to go south, but this is a bit dangerous because they have to go through Otrivsky towards Kurakove, as the Russians are already nearby, they previously had attacked Horstray before, and the Russians did try to push in the southwest of Krasnohorivka westward towards Horstray. So the Russians are already making some moves around here already. So this is the retreat. This just very small no passages for the Ukrainians to retreat. So it's a bit dangerous. If the Ukrainians do not manage the battlefield well, I think that if they fail to control where the battles are being fought, then they might find themselves operationally encircled. So this is the pretty concerning. If you are pro-Ukrainian, I highly urge you to really look at the map. And no, this map, especially DPA's mapping, I suggest you use DPA's mapping because the Russian map sometimes is a bit copish. The Ukrainian map is constantly late because they are withholding information to not to allow people to panic. So I highly recommend you to use the DPA mapping. This link is in the description below. Study the map. You can look at the sources. All the information is there. There's Ukrainian sources, Russian sources. There's only a few sources because these are the trusted ones that are used. And even with these sources plus the geolocations, it is already very clear what is currently going to happen. And you can look at the terrain, the situation. For me, the Ukrainians cannot allow the lines to fall at all anymore in this region here. They have to hold the line. So then definitely the Russians are going to put pressure and try. So this is going to panic the Ukrainian forces. So I think, really, just go and take a look. I don't take sides. I'm not pro-Russian. I'm not pro-Ukrainian either. But I 100% will not be pro-Ukrainian because I don't like the way how their governments, how the government talk and the way how they behave. But the Russian side, there's also no incentive for me to be pro-Russian because I'm literally living in the West. Singapore is part of the Western countries, even though we are actually geographically in the East, like Australia, like Japan. But generally we are part of the West. I earn Western money using Western technology, using Western companies. My life is very affected by the West. So I'm pro-West, but I don't want the West to collapse. But the West is collapsing, and that's why the truth matters. Don't blind yourself. I think that is very, very important. And interesting thing to note was that let me see if I can show you. I think I can. The before I carry on the conclusions, the China News Asia is a Singapore mainstream media. It's like the CNN or the CNBC, Fox News, Washington Times. No, not really. It's a Fox News, CNN kind of thing of Singapore. It's government supported China News Asia, and they actually did a exclusive on Ukrainian demographic issues, and it's very interesting that they actually went to this. They went to talk about this, and they interviewed people. Interviewed soldiers, and basically the conclusion was then they have the correspondent on the ground, and basically in this Kiev, if I'm not wrong. And they interviewed they talked to women workers now becoming a trucker, and talk to the professor, talk about the demographic issues. So it is it feels like the tide is in terms of the media space is also turning as well. It like for Singapore, there's a change of the prime minister, so it looks like the foreign policy might change. And I'm not sure about the rest of the European countries. I feel like the amount of weaponry that they are giving to Ukraine has slowed down by a lot, and the Ukrainians are doing some very crazy moves like the Kursk offensive. So things are not well, and I think you need to know, which is why I think the Singapore media, supported by the government funded, they also start to review more about the reality on the ground in Ukraine. So things are unraveling, and truth is very, very important. So it doesn't matter, if you are anti-West or pro-West. I think a Western collapse is bad for the entire world. The best thing is actually to hope for the West being more sensible and be more logical, be more cooperative with the rest of the world. I think that is the direction to go. Whatever it is, this is what it is. Selidove region, there is some more clarification or clarity in terms of the front line. It looks like the front line actually is more like this. Something is, it looks more like this, the front line, as with all these clarifications coming in. So, but otherwise the battle still goes on in the region. And we have, of course, confirmation over at Horodivka, where the Russians finally is now with confirmed to be have taken most of Horodivka, or at least half of it. The Krutya Krasnaya region, there is a retrograde this area, with the Ukrainians confirmed to have still holding these positions, invalidating some of these Russian claims. But the Russian claims in the Horodivka region is actually more accurate. So we shall continue to monitor the situation. I think the Ukrainians are now really trying to push back the Russians. They are counterattacking in the region. So the Pokrov offensive currently will take some time. I think the Russians are getting hold back, but the Russians are very distracted right now because they are now trying to do this Nevelsky and circumvent. So this is now the priority. It's not the battle towards Pokrov. So let's continue to monitor and see how this continue to develop. Things is really very bad, very bad. The situation at New York continues to be in a very weird situation. The Ukrainians dropped a video showing a flag on a very tall building in the middle of New York. The problem with this planting of the flag is that it's not planted by soldiers. Clearly, it's planted by a drone. I looked closely at the video footage. I don't believe any soldiers would climb that no rather blown up building to the kind of height to plant a flag. I think it is very clearly a drone installed flag, and it's clearly in the very firm Russian controlled regions. So this is a sign that the Ukrainians are really desperate to withhold information or to prevent the publicity of the fall of New York. The Russians, in reaction to the previous Ukrainian claim, have raised a flag in the northern part of New York. They raised a flag here. This is previously no claim to be taken by the Ukrainians. So the Russians clearly is seeing all these PR battles in the online space, and they have dropped this flag in reaction to this PR situation. And then this one is raised by a Russian soldier, so it's very different. You see the Russian soldier in the ruins of the house raising the flag and planted there. So very different from this one, which is just a drone taking a video footage of a flag already planted there. So I think the Ukrainians are trying really hard to make sure that the news of the fall of New York does not get released, or do not get released at a time that they are not ready to deal with it. So, and the fighting continued to be reported at Skibinivka, which is continued to be a really weird situation. And as I mentioned before, for fighting to be in this area, the Russians have to be in this area as well, which means that there's a high chance that the Russians have already taken much more grounds within this southern part of Torex, and they are now attacking in the direction of Shipinivka, whereas in this area the Ukrainians are still holding some grounds around Nelipivka, so the Russians are pushing in this area. I think this is more likely to be the front line, but we don't have this, and this is also, this is just one of the front line that we are seeing this problem where the reports does not match the mappings. The mappings don't make sense, and the reports seems to suggest a more advanced line for the Russians. The other place that have this situation is over in the Bakhmut southern part, the southern half of Bakhmut. Fighting continued to be reported in the Stuposhki Proteshny region. Previously, we have fighting reported in Bilohora region, and to be honest, the front line is really far away. Only the Ukrainians continue to mention Andriivka and Klishevka. The Russians do not mention about Klishevka or Andriivka anymore. This is, if I didn't remember wrongly, is always the Ukrainians. The Russians are talking about Stuposhki, and they're talking about Proteshny, and Bilohora previously was talked about by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. So there must be some kind of a reality where the Russians actually may have already taken most of the canal region. This progress might have already been accomplished, and they are already starting to push over to the western bank of the canal. That could be a possibility, especially with this geolocation previously along the canal, which was a surprise, suddenly came out. So there must be some kind of information that's being hidden away from the public regarding this change of the front line at this moment. No one is talking about it. And this just the second one. There's another one is over in Siversk, which I did mention before as well, where now the fighting, the latest information from the Russian Defense Ministry suggests fighting near Siversk. How the hell the fighting has reached Siversk? This is the only way that fighting can be in the region of Siversk, or no, maybe there's Novosibirsk there. So it's near the region of Siversk, is to believe that the Russian claims of the capture of Vimka and Novodarivka is valid. And if these captures are valid, that means that the front line actually will look like this, because the Russian Defense Ministry has also announced the capture of Sperne previously on the 30th of June. So, which means it's this one as well. And we have also the previous report of fighting at Zvianivka, which means the Russians are actually near Zvianivka as well. So the front line should actually look more like this. This is probably the more likely front line based on the Russian reports. And we don't have this mapping. We currently just don't have this mapping of the Russian having this line. So this is a very, very interesting situation. Three different fronts, three separate situations where the reports of the fighting don't match with the mapping. So this is something that we definitely have to look at. We have to monitor closely and see how this goes. Yeah, and the Russians have not talked about Perezne quite. No, the last one was on the 5th. So that means their front line may be something like this. No, maybe something like this. So we will continue to monitor. The Russians also started the attack on Fedorivka for the first time since July, to the middle of July. So this could also spell the beginning of a new push, maybe a flanking operation perhaps, or to hit to the rear position. That's also possible. There's a possibility as well. All these are very, very interesting and intriguing developments. Osteo fronts, there's nothing really much to talk about, generally speaking. So we won't cover this. We have covered this before, in previous conclusions. And then let's talk about Kursk. In Kursk, in Kursk region, the latest change, I would say, is the Russians seems to have begun their counteroffensive. There is multiple evidence, as I mentioned in the situation report. I will just repeat a few of them again. First, we have the infantry being geolocated within Chekaskoye Parashnoye, which means that the Russians have actually re-entered into the village, and this is one of the first sign. Another sign that of the Russians could have already pushed out was previously that previous geolocation where the Russians have pushed out of Karanevo. This is of course a very, very major development. Another one that is more recent is actually the geolocation south of Kauchuk. Russian forces have an armored personnel carrier, probably a BMP or BTR, pushing out of Kauchuk, and they hit a mine. And the fact that they actually even went out of this castle, because it looks like a castle to me, the suggests that the Russians is now starting to push out, and they're starting to do the counteroffensive, and they're starting to move in the towards the Ukrainian forces. So we are the Ukrainians are definitely not necessarily be in this area here. This is currently just a gray zone, but the high chances that the Russians have already established the lines much further. But the fact that they hit a mine here also does shows that they haven't really came out from Kauchuk much. So this gray zone is legitimate. It's still a legitimate gray zone. Because the Russians may only just started to try to push out, but the Ukrainians are already not here. The Ukrainians are holding the line much further away. That could be a possibility. So this becomes like a no man's land of sort. Maybe there are small squads here and there, being forward scouts to report on enemy movements and whatnot. But generally speaking, I feel like the Russians are starting to push. So this is very, very important to note. and fighting have not been reported in this northern extreme regions for a long time. The latest developments is the fighting reported at Crimea, Kalinov, Medvedevka, and Karinevo. So you can see that the lines is only here, nowhere that far north. So the Russians are pushing in multiple directions. It looks like they're going to push south from Kauchuk region. Maybe those are just advanced squads. We have the fighting over on the eastern flank. We have the fighting on the western flank. So the Ukrainians are still trying to push around in this northeastern region. They are trying to push Ruskaya Konopelka, and they are still continue to try to go towards Glushkovo through the what is this place? Komarovka direction. And there, according to the Russians, they also seems to suggest that the Ukrainians have some small success in taking Krasno-Oktябrskoye in this region here. But yeah, let's take this with a pinch of salt because this has always been combated. So it's contested region. So they may have already taken this a long time ago. The main problem is actually Komarovka. This is the one that the Ukrainians struggled really hard and still have not captured this. So this is the town to watch rather than the Krasno-Oktябrskoye. I think this is not really that important. The important one is the Komarovka one. But yeah, the Ukrainians are struggling quite a bit in this region here, and the number of fighting is really has largely reduced. Even the shelling in the Sumy region has largely reduced as well. If you look at the bombardments in the rear positions, there's only like 6 or 7 reports. This is actually one of the lowest since we started to track the shelling. I think this is very, very few, which and there is also no clear clustering of the shelling. This may also be a signal that there is no huge gathering of Ukrainian forces anymore that could actually launch an offensive in these various directions that we have been anticipating, but looks like they are not happening right now. Looks like the combat capability has been degraded too much for the Ukrainians to do much. So anyway, this is the conclusions for the past day. And as the war continues, the next update is going to be the frontline changes report. For those that are not aware of, find out why I didn't update certain latest information. The reason is because I will need to let the day go through first, let the information be more mature a bit, rather than do breaking news. Breaking news is often wrong. So that's the main thing. So I want to cover what has already been done, unburdened by the past, by what is going to come. I forgot the phrase. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next update.